Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you.
Time is keenly found. We are not alone. Water over stone, even if you're by yourself.
The words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Today's music is called This Island, Earth. Do your ancestors speak to you in your dreams? They do. You just have to know how to listen. This episode marks our 200th podcast, and our guest will be ancestral dreamer Alaya Dannu. I am your host, Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a weekly podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review. But most importantly, tell your friends. After all, it's all about getting people to talk about dreams, and this is one opportunity to say a little bit about dreams to your friends. You can find archives on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and all of those podcast platforms. You can also go to the KSQD website, ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Okay, so I'm going to start with my personal dream work. You know, this is a repeat dream, but what can I say? The dream is still speaking to me, so I'm going to speak about it to you. So, remember those elephants in the wave? Wow. Okay, so I'm standing on a cliff, and I'm looking out over the ocean. There's two young girls in the water. One of them is Ellie from The Last of Us, that series that was on recently. And I'm seeing this huge wave out at a distance, and I look closely, and I realize that there are elephants in the wave. And like they're inside the wave, like maybe they are the wave. They're kind of tumbling, but there's like this kind of archetypal feeling of like the elephants as wave. And I'm afraid, and I tell the girls, get out of the water. And I don't know if they can hear me or not. And that's the dream. Well, of course, it's part of a longer dream, but this whole image of elephants in the wave has really stayed with me. And I've been exploring this in many different ways. And recently, I was talking to my coach, and he suggested, what is it like to be Ellie in the water looking at the point of view of the elephant wave? And it just shifted everything. There was like, when I imagined myself being this tough, funny, scrappy girl looking at that wave full of elephants, and I'm like, that's where I want to go. I want to swim out to the wave. There was no hesitation at all. I'm not afraid, or maybe I am. I could be afraid and do it anyway, but that's where I want to be. I want to go out and be with the elephants, maybe even be one of the elephants. And so that's just really shifted the dream for me. And there's still a part of me standing on the cliff going, oh no, look out, Ellie, look out. And yet that's okay too. But there's another part of me that's swimming out for the wave, just to be part of the wave and not running away from it. So working with dreams, many layers over weeks. And of course, elephants now get to be a totem of mine. I love the idea of having an elephant totem. Okay, enough about me. So I'd like to say hello to Alaya Dannu. Hi.
Hello.
Wonderful to have you on the show.
Wonderful to be back.
Excellent. So Alaya Dannu, M.A., also known as Dia Dannu, is completing her doctoral degree in education at Felton University. She explores the transmission of ancestral memory across generations experienced through dreams, focusing on a re-emergent mother goddess tradition of her foremothers. She has written several essays on the subject matter, contributing to e-zines and specialized platforms such as the Blog for Feminism and Religion, Magoism, and Dreamtime magazine. You can find Alaya at templeofhatawy.org. That's Temple of HETTAWY.org, Temple of Hatawy. So Alaya, thanks again for being on the show. You were on a couple years ago, and I just really wanted to have you back.
Yeah, thank you. I was going through my email and I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. It's awesome.
So you're getting close to finishing your doctoral degree. Congratulations. That's so exciting.
I jumped over to the education program.
Uh-huh.
And so I'll begin writing my dissertation next spring.
Okay.
And so I'm excited about it because it's like, it's like you see the finish line and you're like, okay, almost there.
Right. Totally. I get that. Exactly. And so what is the topic of your PhD? Is that all involved with this ancestral dreaming?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So
Great.
the topic is the transmission of ancestral memory, experience through dreams, because that's been my experience.
Yeah.
And I'm finding, as I go through this doctoral journey, family members are, sharing their dreaming experiences as well that touches upon ancestors that haven't spoken to me but speaks to them. And so it's just like, I want more information. I look out into the world and I don't, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen a lot of it or enough of it for me to refer other people that I meet along the way. When they ask me, so why are you here? What are your adornments about? Why are you doing this travel? And I tell them, they're like, oh, I've had similar dreams, but I don't know where to look. And so it's like,
So the dreams may be fairly common. Like how do we know what is an ancestral dream, and how would I recognize it if I was having one?
So an ancestral dream is the similarities between an ancestral dream and lucid dreaming. That's been pretty much explored in scholarship is that you're lucid. You're aware. And that's the only similarity. The biggest difference is that ancestral dreams cannot be incubated. You cannot change them. You can't stop them. You're having your lucid dream and then a message comes in and then it changes abruptly, or it changes suddenly, or you go straight into it. And there's an awareness of, I know I'm dreaming. I see this, be it like an ancestral being, and it could be in human form, it could be in animal form, it could be a plant form. And they're revealing information. They're speaking to you about, your ancestors, where you come from, or how to heal yourself. And there's this innate knowing, that's my ancestor, right?
Okay.
And then, so it's like you can't move in the dream. You have no control. You're a full-on passenger.
Okay.
But you're fully aware that it's happening. And so then where it varies is either, depending upon your relationship to this ancestor, you can ask questions, or you're just completely receptive. Or they'll ask you to repeat back to them what was spoken or not. But bottom line is you have no control. It's like you're forced to sit and receive, and then the dream is over, and you either wake up and record it, or you have a really good memory, and then you wake up, the next morning, you're like, wow, I remember that dream, and you recorded that. So that's the biggest difference.
But so I bet that there's lots of people who have a resistance to this kind of a thing. And like you mentioned, your relatives who have had these kinds of dreams, and I can imagine that certainly when I'm resistant in a dream, I may not be getting the message. But are there clues that this is something that's possible? I mean, I'm wondering if there's like a kind of a lower order where we're just starting to get introduced to the ancestors. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's the biggest thing. It's connecting to your ancestry first and foremost at the waking level. And as you're doing research, so that could be genealogy, that could be reconnecting to traditional practices or a traditional belief. And so when you cultivate that connection, that's the other thing. Ancestors rely heavily on relationships. So you have to develop a relationship to them. And that doesn't mean, it's not ancestral worship, just to be clear. You're not worshiping anything. You're reestablishing a connection. And so when you spend the energy and time to reconnect, to do research, and to take it all in, to reflect on it, to journal on your process, it starts to work on you. And then that's the invitation for them to start coming. And you're like, oh my gosh, I had this dream. It's a little short snippet, but it's the first. And that's all it takes. But you have to do the work in a waking state first.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because I have had like what about so it's okay. Here's something that I've often mull over, Alaya. The distinction between sort of ancestors and previous lives. I don't know if that's something that you've
Yes.
looked at, and because they're like the ancestors for me are like genetically before who I am, whereas the pre-life is more like a karmic or a soul level connection. And I believe I had certain dreams that feel like reincarnation dreams.
Yes.
I wonder if you want to speak a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I've had several dreams where it's definitely, oh, that was a past life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yes, they're connected to what's going on in this life. And so that's also something that I'm glad you brought that up, because when it comes to past lives, we've had many.
Yeah.
But when we're experiencing a past life memory, it's what's relevant to this life. And so when you're looking at like a dream, you're like, oh no, that's a past life memory. And then you look at your ancestral dreams, there are two layers to that ancestral dream. One, it's absolutely, the genetic biological connection.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, it's that higher consciousness connection. Like, it doesn't matter what lives you've taken, what lives you've incarnated into, you're connected to those beings anyway, regardless. So it doesn't matter what body you're in.
Mm-hmm.
It's your essence. So there are two layers to that. And that is what really defines who you are as a being, having a human experience. Your past life memories will help you to better remember, the relevance of these ancestral dreams, if that makes sense. So they're interconnected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's helpful. So I'm wondering, like, one of the things I understand is that these ancestors often have information for you, or they have requests for you. Is that, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but what kind of I'm wondering if you want to share a specific example of a conversation with an ancestor and what they may want and what they gave to you. What is that like? Like, what is it in it for me? What's in it for me, the dreamer?
Yeah.
Right?
Generally it does depend. Like, it could be if somebody's having a health issue.
Yeah.
And an ancestor will come through, an ancestor that was a healer or a medicine woman or a medicine man will come through and reveal, okay, these are the plants and the herbs that you need to create to heal yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For those of us that menstruate, the founder of the Honey Pot company, she developed organic feminine products based upon an ancestral dream. Like, she was struggling with bacterial infections, and she wanted to heal herself. And so her ancestors showed her what she needed to do, and then she put that into a product. So that's like a profound and really, simple, out in the world example where you have a CEO or somebody that created a product based on her ancestors revealing the solution to her in her dream. For myself, gosh, there's just so many. Okay, so for example, I remember I think it was 2013 going into 2014, I was with my mother. And we were in North Carolina at the time, and she was just, preparing for a contract. And so I was helping her with her dogs. She had 2 dogs at the time. And I remember taking a nap during the day because I was up all night. I would be up all night, trying to figure out, what's my next path. And I feel more connected to the ancestral realms at night. And so during the day, I'm taking naps. And there was one where there's the first dream was of Vishnu. So he's a Hindu deity. He came, he placed his hand on my head and he said, those that give praise to Padmakara will receive great blessings. And I had no idea as to what he was talking about. Like I knew who Vishnu was, but I didn't know what he was speaking about. And then later in that dream, before waking up, I heard a female voice whisper in my ear, like Mahadi. And it like, that's what woke me up. And and I'm turning in the room and I'm like, who's calling? And like immediately I was like, who's calling me? And I was like, well, what's a Mahadi?
Yeah. Yeah, really.
And so I write down these dreams and then I Google first the Mahadi because it was what woke me up out of my sleep. And a Mahadi was the name of a temple dancer, a Devadasi in Orissa, in the state of Orissa in India. And of course, I had no conscious awareness that India had, a dance tradition where the Mahadis were female dancers, and it was a female dance tradition that was passed down from mother to daughter, or mother to adoptive daughter. Yeah. And I had no idea that Odissi, which is the dance we see today, because the Mahadi tradition doesn't exist anymore. Odissi, the foundation of Odissi is the Mahadi tradition. And so I had no clues about that. And I didn't even know that the dance vocabulary that I was being taught in my dreams. So I was being taught how to embody movement in a very specific way and certain movement vocabulary, certain movement positions in my dreams for 15 years before that. Oh. And I had no idea that the two were related or that the two were connected.
And so that this dream gave you the names,
right?
Like the names
gave me exactly,
and the tradition, yeah,
exactly. Furthermore, Vishnu, I didn't know the connection to Vishnu. In later stages of this dance tradition, the Mahadi was viewed as Lakshmi, as the embodiment of Lakshmi, and in the Hindu tradition, Vishnu and Lakshmi are pairs. So, and Padmakara is another name for Lakshmi as well. So, and only recently, last year in 2022, did I come across a verse that is dedicated, a prayer that's dedicated to Lakshmi, where it says pretty much the same thing. Those that give blessings to Padmakara, those that give praise and offerings to Lakshmi will receive great blessings. And they use the term Padmakara. So that's an example. And it's like, I didn't know I had a connection to this dance tradition. And did I have a dream of remembering myself as a temple dancer? Yes, I did, but only in 2022. And I had these dreaming experiences in 2013.
Oh, wow. So 9 years later.
9 years later, it's, comes to a fruition. Because what happened between then was I did the work. I investigated, well, what's a Mahadi? And then I see it and it's like, oh, wow, is this the dance that was taught in my dreams? And then I start looking at, videos on YouTube and it's like, wait, I remember that movement or I remember that movement. And then looking at online courses and trying to take, beginner steps. And it's like, okay, I need a teacher. And then to have a dream that says, okay, now refinement is needed. And it's like, well, are you mean go and find a dance teacher and take a class? And yes, that's exactly what it meant, right? And I remember when we finally moved back to New York, I decided to take a trial class in Odissi at Navatman, it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to the Indian arts, classical arts. And the teacher that was doing the Odissi instruction at the time, when I took the trial class, she looked at me and she was like, Alaya, I don't believe that this is your first class. And so I swore to her, I said, look, I will bring a printout of all of the dreams where I was taught dance, right? And its connection to Odissi, so that you can understand that I'm not lying to you. Because she looked offended. And it's the last thing you want.
Yeah.
You as a teacher, you don't want somebody that already knows how to do the dance in a trial class because it's free.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like you should go pay for the classes.
Right.
And so the week after that, I brought in, I think it was like a 4-page document, and I said, here, read it, and then you can leave it at the front desk because I was volunteering at this organization at the time. I said, you can leave it, and I'll pick it up the next day. And sure enough, the next class, she was like, this is very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about dance, Alaya, and what does it mean to you, and what is it? Because I'd love a lucid dream to tell me how I could win $1 million, or some kind of guidance about finishing my PhD or something.
Mm-hmm.
But and yet this dancing is extremely important to you, and I'd love to hear you say a little bit about what's important to you about this, and how it's contributed to your life.
So this dance, it's a sacred dance. So what that means is it's used as an offering to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
Or say if, I need guidance on how to move, where to move next, or there's a job a family member really wants, and they're like, can you pray for me? That's how I pray.
Mm-hmm.
I utilize
That's how
the
you
dance.
Pray.
Yeah. I remember when I was teaching English in China in 2011, it was, and in 2011, this was a waking vision where an ancestral mother, she kind of just like dropped in or like walked through the living room, and she turned around and looked at me and said, your dance is Ebo. And she walked away. And so Ebo is a Yoruba term, and that means offering. So your dance is an offering.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, being taught in the dreams by these women, it felt like deeply special, deeply sacred, like deeply important. And then when I started utilizing it as prayer and started to see the effects of it, how it would help my mother when she needed help, or a family member or a friend that wanted a job. And I was like, well, I can pray for you. And that's what I would do. It's like, wow. So for me, it's like, what was the Mahadi tradition before it was influenced by patriarchal tradition? Right?
Yeah.
Like for it to be connected in that way and to see it through dreams, like what was it? Because for me, if it's a way to pray and to receive blessings, then how was that utilized in ancient times? You understand? So it's like, for me, dance is sacred. It's a very sacred. It's prayer, and I cherish it deeply.
Well, my understanding of prayer, of the kind of more traditional verbal kind of prayer, and even like the position that we might be in when we're praying, are ways of focusing our mind. And so it's more about the focus of the mind and the attention of the heart, rather than how you got there. And I can see that dance can be an amazing way to really focus your mind and your heart. And as someone who has a hard time meditating, as like me, that dance is something that is very appealing, because moving my body is extremely important to me, and it's something that I have a hard time tuning into the needs of my body. Certainly traditionally it's gotten better over time, but there's a way that when I move, I'm really listening to my body and trusting my body. So I see it can be a kind of a dance. And I know at our conference last year in Tucson that you did a dance offering as part of your presentation. And it was a beautiful moment, really moving.
Yeah, thank you. I take the opportunities at the conferences to share my research and to share aspects of my research. And the dance thing has been sitting, like hovering for a while. And so I was like, you know what, let me, do a presentation just so that people can see, because I'm always talking about it. I'm always talking about how, these dreams influence my life. So what does that look like? And the greatest example is the dance. And so because it's not a performance art, I, of course, I go to my ancestors and I say, I want to honor this, appropriately, and just please ensure that everything is okay. Let me know if I should not do it. And I didn't get a no answer. So it was like, okay, holding it in reverence. Absolutely. It's a way of demonstrating how ancestral dreams can influence your life or the things that you engage in. And so, yeah, I'm just glad to have been able to share that with IASD.
Well, it definitely left an impression, because this year in the Ashland IASD conference, you'll be opening the conference with a sacred dance and also closing the conference. So they'll be within the container of this dream-inspired dance.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm honored. I'm excited. Because if you really look back into how sacred dance was utilized in the past, opening ceremony, absolutely, right, and the way to close and honor that container. So for me, it's just a way of honoring the way in which it was created and the way in which it was revealed to me and in my dreams.
Right. So I am thinking about the whole idea of movement and dance. Like, I've been playing around with this idea of dream dancing, and that, we talk about working with our dreams through talking about them, through writing about them, journaling and drawing, and why not dance? Like, why not explore them just through movement, like through, you might say, abstract movement. Like, I do an embodiment kind of a practice too in my groups, where we kind of act out the dream, and it's amazing what comes up. But I'm starting to play around with this idea of dream dancing, of just following the nudging of your body and seeing, while holding the dream in mind, while holding the images and the feelings of the dream, and exploring the dream through movement. And it seems like this is not just directed as the kind of dancing that you're talking about, which is you've had specific dance moves in your dreams, but there is something sacred about the body that most religions don't acknowledge.
Yeah, well, the body is an amplifier of energy.
Way to think about it,
right? Because we have an electromagnetic field. Like, it's scientific. It's a science. Like, we have an energetic field around us. Our heart emits, energetic pulses, and so when you have intention, that's an energy in and of itself, and you put that in movement, you're amplifying that. And so to be able to take a part of your dream and just sit with it, and then allow the energy that emerges from that, to be embodied in a movement without judgment, that is powerful. And that's a beautiful way of integrating the meaning or the message or the medicine of that particular dream. So, like, I absolutely encourage that.
Okay. Well, we'll start the experiment, and I will have to let you know how it goes. So we're going to take a short break. My guest today is Alaya Dannu, and we're talking about ancestral dreaming, and her webpage is templeofhatawy.org. Hatawy is Hetawy, templeofhatawy.org. My name is Catherine Bell, and this is The Dream Journal. We are broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz, co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU. Upcoming guests include more presenters from the June Dream Conference in Ashland. Next week, we will have on the Radio 8-Ball show host Andrus Jones, who does an amazing show all about synchronicity. Also, we'll have Bob Haas, Angel Morgan, Leslie Elson, and also my writing coach, Andy Couturier. Many of you know I am working on a book, and Andy will have some interesting things to say. You can find out about the conference at asdreams.org. It's in Ashland in June. Ashland's not that far. I'll be driving. Would you like to join the Dream Journal team? We are looking to get the podcast published on the audio distributor PRX. Contact me if you are interested. Modest payment is available. Okay, my guest today is Alaya Dannu. Alaya, I was interested to see that you have your own podcast called Cosmogenia. And
Yes.
yeah, I wonder if you want to say a little bit about that. I've listened to a few of the episodes, and I am very curious. What sponsored you to get that started, and what kind of topics you've been exploring?
Yeah, so I never hadn't had a thought to start a podcast.
Yeah.
And it actually came up in an ancestral transmission. I was in ceremony. I was living in LA at the time, and it had gotten to a point where, like, I would feel, ancestral mothers just crowd around me, and they just started speaking. And I had realized that even though my lips were moving, it was them that was talking.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, and you're going to start a podcast, and you're going to talk about these stories, and you're going to share them. And I'm like, what?
Oh.
I'm like, wait, what? Why? No, this is too much. Like, it's too much in the sense of it's rewarding for me to understand more of past narratives that revolve around the female form that are inspiring and empowering, because we don't have a lot of those at all. And so that's what the podcast is. It's me sharing a lot of these transmissions, be it from dreams or just in ceremony, about prehistoric narratives. And what I do is, when they come through, I do the research. I look up scholarship. It's like, oh, can I find this? And sure enough, yes, it's somewhere. Someone's done some scholarship on the topic, and a word mentioned or a phrase mentioned in this transmission would actually be, something that was uncovered in an archaeological dig, or or in a cultural narrative. So it's not just, ancestral stories from my personal ancestry, but stories that can be empowering for women that are looking for narratives that help them to better understand themselves and their place in the world. So that's what the Cosmogenia is.
Okay. Well, there's a phrase that I'm particularly curious about: divine birth priestess. If you could say, yes. Am I speaking to one right now, perhaps?
Wow. Was not expecting that to come up.
You never know.
So that phrase was coined by Dr. Marguerite Rigoglioso from her dissertation work that she did at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And so the concept of divine birth, the way that she defines it, is miraculous. It's around the concept of miraculous conception, or conceiving through non-ordinary means. And so in her work, she focuses extensively on ancient Greece and priestesshoods that could have attempted to utilize this practice. And so it's, and what's been revealed to me is that it's a way for a woman to conceive ancestors, like ancestors with a lot of knowledge, with like highly revered or beings with knowledge or wisdom that can help the society or the humanity or the culture that this woman is in. She goes through a process of preparing herself to conceive. Now, whether it's miraculously or not, it depends. It depends on the time of, the human story, the time and the age. But a divine birth priestess is someone who has guidance from her ancestral mothers on the practices she needs to do to cultivate the appropriate energy and mindset, how to connect with this, this divine being that's going to be coming through her as her child, with the knowledge and information that both she needs and, the people in her immediate space or the culture at large is required to have. So that's what that terminology is. And since you brought it up, that is what, in my topic, the transmission of ancestral memory, with a focus on a reemergent mother goddess tradition. That's the tradition, the practice of being a divine birth priestess.
So is this a question of bringing in actual human babies, or is it bringing in ideas, bringing in there's many babies in dreams, often?
Yes.
So
absolutely
all of that, huh?
All of that, right? So it could be birthing in a large amount of knowledge, so to speak, right? And in dream time, it will show up as a very coherent and wise child. And so the priestess would just in dream time communicate with this being, but would birth the information. And it could also be an actual child, but the spirit of this child is a wise being, so to speak. And so this being is just helping her cultivate herself, her vessel, her body, making sure that she's eating healthy, she's and ingesting information that's healthy energetically, so that when she conceives, and however which way she conceives, the child doesn't have negative energy or negative thoughts, or the amount of trauma is greatly decreased because the mother has done the work. She has done the work, and the practices that has been passed on to her to bring down this very specific energetic frequency or specific knowledge.
Right. Well, it almost one thing that's kind of mumbling around in my mind is that the child as guide, the child that is the divine child. I'm thinking, of course, of the birth of Christ, and talk about miraculous birth. This is
right.
One of the culturally dominant paradigms, and there is something about the dawning of a new age, and that as we sure need one.
Yeah, there's all, it's in cultures of all over the world. And I know Marguerite gives a brief mention to them, very brief mention to them. But when I look at my mixed ancestry, I look at the Akans, because I have Akan ancestry, and they're, a cultural group. They're not homogenous. They're very heterogeneous. Gosh, 9 words. They're not a homogenous group of people, but the cultural identity of Akans, mostly now in West Africa. But when you look at their cultural stories, at least with some of the branch families, that motif is there as well. The woman and her self-begotten child, right? And when, in the in the Western translation of some of their terminology, the queen mothers of the ancient times, when their daughters are ready to go out to found societies, right, to create their own cultural bubbles. This is the practice that they did. And so it was really, being guided by these high ancestors and practices on how to bring them onto the earth to help further perpetuate this energetic stream of knowledge. So that, that's just one example of the many that are out there.
Okay, excellent. Hey, Alaya, we have a caller who just dialed in. Let's get the caller on the line. Hello, are you there?
Yes, hi, this is Chris.
Hey, Chris from Felton. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you for the show. This has just been so interesting and informative and enlightening. My question is, what's the difference? I'm trying to understand the difference between a visitation dream and an ancestral dream. Because I've had several visitation dreams where, family members who have passed on have come to me in a lucid dream and given me what I would define as spiritual information, and I'm wondering if that's different than your experience of ancestral dreams.
That's a really good question, and I would say there's overlap with visitation dreams. If they're like immediate family members, like even like a cousin or aunt, brother or sister, it's immediate, right? And so it would make sense to to say, oh, I just had a visit from my recently departed. Versus when we talk about ancestors, it's more of that could also apply, especially if they're like a grandparent, because they've become your ancestor, right? But most certainly those from later times. And so it's a large percentage of those that have come from a later time in the timeline of your existence would be more defined as an ancestral. And I would say those that have recently departed, a sibling or whatnot, would be more of a visitation. But you could also define it as an ancestral, if that makes sense.
Could there be kind of a continuum? I mean, that they're still dead. I mean, they have that information or whatever.
Well, I mean, absolutely. Right? It's not, it's not like a hard set in stone linear type of way to define it. But if you understand ancestor to me, those who came before you, then once they cross over, they become pretty much, they become that. So I would say that would apply.
Okay. Chris, I wonder, do you feel like sharing one of your dreams?
Sure. Just real briefly, one was my grandfather, and we were very close. We loved each other deeply and dearly, and when he appeared in the dream, I instantly knew that I was dreaming, and that it was, that he was visiting me from wherever his existence was, and I asked him, I said, do you have any wisdom that you can share with me? I'm getting choked up. And then he said, life has an undeniable will.
Oh.
Yeah. So I have really taken that as a divine message of truth. But I just wanted to say I really did appreciate your explanation. It makes sense to me because, especially for those of us where we really don't have much knowledge of ancestors that go back more than a few generations, it makes sense that knowledge would come in ways that are more in the symbolic ways that you've described, where they're not going to show up as people because we never knew them in their human incarnation, but their messages are going to come through in other ways in our dream symbols and dream personifications in other ways.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank
Great.
you.
Well, thank you so much. This has really been wonderful.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Life has an undeniable will.
I love that.
That's wisdom right there.
Yes, it is.
I feel like that kind of invites me to trust myself as well as to trust life, all living beings.
Yeah.
Alaya, one of the things that's mulling through my mind is like, can we use these dreams to learn about our ancestors? You said that you have to do the waking life work, but then Chris brings in the fact that most of us don't know much about our ancestors.
Well, I mean, absolutely. Like, so if you have a dream and there's a lot of symbolism around, let's say, spirals and mounds, so to speak, right? And you're seeing the light of the sun moving across from one part of the dream to the other, and you're like, where can I find? Where in the world am I going to see spirals and mounds? Ireland. for example,
okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
Right. So if you see that, and that's just an example. If you experience that in a dream and you have this connection to it, and you're just like, but I don't get it, and you start looking up spirals and mounds in Ireland and New Grange, and you're looking at the research around it. There you go. That's your first step. And you just start looking and looking and looking until the next clue comes through. So that's an example. That's just one way.
Okay. And then, another thing that comes up is I'm not always that proud of my ancestors. Like they don't, there's abuse in my family, and there's other bad behavior, and there's sometimes there's an urge to say, well, I don't need that. And what about healing shame?
So a big thing about doing ancestral work is, you acknowledge that existed.
Yeah.
But it's not about taking that on at all, right? And it's also being aware, the human condition can do some pretty nasty things.
That's true.
Right? And so it's acknowledging that existed, right? And saying, that's not who I am today. And part of what I'm going to do is to live life in a way that brings healing, that brings healing to everyone in my ancestry, and those that it may have affected, or those that it have affected. Because especially for someone with mixed ancestry, I've got everything. Right. And so it's been, I'm aware of my ancestors on that side did that, but that's not what I'm here to emulate, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm here to heal, and I'm here to bring awareness and knowledge around the hidden aspects of all of our lived lives and the voices that were silent. So becoming aware of those hidden aspects brings healing, because then that's saying, this is what our true nature truly was. And it's unfortunate that you strayed, but hopefully in your next life you'll live better, you'll do better, and then you release it. You don't hold on to it. That's another thing. Like, holding on to it will cause paralysis in life. You won't move forward.
Oh yeah. Like picking out the wound, never letting it heal.
Yeah, exactly.
I do sometimes feel like I'm healing my ancestral trauma. And then one of the other thing that comes to mind is that there's Jeremy Taylor used to say this thing that whenever there's an audience in a dream, if you're on stage and there's an audience or the crowd of people, that he would say that these are your ancestors and that they're cheering you on because you're doing the work of healing that they couldn't do, that they're doing, or you're doing the next steps, and that any crowds, or especially in a theater or that kind of a thing, that those are your ancestors and they're watching and supporting you. I wonder if you've heard that kind of an idea before.
Well, I haven't heard it. It's helpful to hear it. I've experienced it.
Yeah, okay. Oh yeah.
So yeah, a few times where I'm on stage and there are things that are happening and I'm just like, oh look, there are people watching, and
Right.
at the end of the performance there's just like this applause, and I'm like, okay, that's great. And so having several of these, and then where you look out into the audience and they're all skeletons, and you're like, oh, you must be really old.
Yeah, those are ancient ancestors.
Very old. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe we can be contributing to the evolution of the human race. I really have to hold that as a truth, because otherwise, how would we go on?
Right. No, exactly.
Yeah. So, Alaya, I wonder if you could tell us. So you're going to be at that conference, as I've mentioned, and you're also giving a workshop about AI generative art. Is that what I read somewhere? Yes. What?
Yes.
Do you want to say a little bit about that? What is that?
Yeah. So if you've been aware of the AI trend, that's going on. Chat GPT for writing, Midjourney is a big one for image generation, text to image generation, and that's the one I predominantly use. I'm totally biased towards Midjourney. There's Playground AI, Starry AI, Blue Willow, a whole bunch out there. And so October 20th, October of 2022, I had a outpatient procedure, and I remember jumping online one morning after, waking up for the day and just resting. And I was like, I want to do art, because I find that when I'm really ill or gone through some sort of procedure, art helps me heal faster.
Yeah.
And so I don't, and this is how I know it's divinely guided. I don't remember how I came across Midjourney. I just remember being on the website and putting in some phrases from dreams that I've had. And these images that were generated started to look like the images I would experience in my dreams. And it would get to a point where I would just put in a phrase, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've seen this in my dream. Like, this is really uncanny. This is wow. So for the workshop, it's pretty much, for those that have these vivid dreams or have had a vivid dream and they kind of want to put it to form, but they're not artists by trade. What are some of the ways that you can possibly bring shape and form? Like, how do you utilize your, aspects of your dreams to give it shape and form? And so it's just it's a fun way to kind of explore the idea. I will say it's, generating images from text is totally random. Like, you don't know what you're going to get, but if you're as specific as possible. And so that's the process. Like, how do you be specific? How do you communicate that specificity to give it shape and form?
Okay. Wow, that sounds exciting. So this is Alaya Dannu, and her webpage is templeofhetaway.org, as a temple of HETTAWY.org. And I wondered, do you have any upcoming events? Or, of course, you have your Cosmogenia podcast, which I encourage people to go check out. Anything else you want to share with our listeners in that way? Then I'll have a minute for some final thoughts.
I mean, other than, I'll be at the conference. My main push for utilizing for my doctoral work is to be able to utilize some of the ancestral dreams in research to fill out some of the gaping holes in past cultural narratives. And, to be able to read an article recently by a professor of anthropology at the University of South Florida, Dr. Kusimba. His work was on the Swahili people. And what him and the people he worked with have come to find is that the narratives created around the medieval Swahili people by Western researchers were inaccurate. And so the DNA that they discovered and orature, the Kilwa Chronicles of the Swahili, actually, turned the Western narrative on its head. So to read that he's utilized orature to support the DNA, and the DNA analysis supporting orature, gives me hope that, yes, okay, I'll be able to utilize ancestral dreams and hard science, to say, hey, these two are in alignment, and the narratives that have been created and perpetuated are inaccurate. So that's part of my journey with also sharing at the conferences. It's like, hey, we can do this. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. And now, we have a professor that has made that first step with oral history. Oh,
wow. Well, that's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the conference, which is in middle of June. You can find out about that at asdreams.org. Alaya, thank you so much.
Thank you. I love doing this.
This is great. Okay. Bye now. So, thanks for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz. It's live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. Tune in if you'd like to call in. The podcast is released on the Monday after the show. It keeps us growing when you subscribe, rate, and review. I am Catherine Bell. Find out about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. Email me at Catherine@ksqd.org. That's KATHERINE@ksqd.org. Follow Experiential Dreamwork on Facebook and Instagram to find out about upcoming shows. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, engineer and music creator. You can find the ambient music at pandemia.com. I'd also like to thank Eva Milady for audio editing. Intro music is Water Over Stones. Outro music is Everything, both by Mood Science. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.